Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Career Pathways Portal support session. We are so excited to have you, and we're going to get started. So if you have any questions, feel free to join in the chat, and we will address them as they come. This session is, of course, being recorded and will be shared out after the session is over. So in case you need to revisit or rewatch any of the content that we covered, yes, it will be recorded and it will be available both via email and posted on the homepage of the Career Pathways portal. Our agenda today will include some announcements about some upcoming deadlines and announcements and opportunities for schools to take advantage of to support them, which will also be included on the CTE calendar. And then we'll jump into the specific focus of today, which is how do we get students with accounts created on the Career Pathways portal. There are 3 different methods. We'll dive into those. Then we will have an update on the work-based learning opportunities grid. And then we'll address any remaining questions and direct you to where you can continue to get support and make further strides in supporting students for their career pathways. So to begin with that, I'm going to bring on our colleague, Alicia Chang, who will share information regarding upcoming events on October 20th and 27th. Alicia, if you could just jump in and share a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. So October 20th and 27th, we will have 2 I-9 verification visits. As we shared previously in our info session, you can reach out to your SIMS borough manager and schedule a school dedicated session to get all your students I-9 verified, regardless if they're going to be participating in an internship this upcoming fall or spring or next school year. They only need to verify once in their high school career, so the sooner you get them verified, the better. But we will be hosting actually 3 I-9 verification places, one on October 20th and one on the 27th from 3 to 5, and we'll have one all-day session on November 8th, and we'll share those links for you to share with your students so they can register for those sessions.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And I heavily recommend folks that you take advantage of the SIMS team offer to have one of their members join you on your school campus to verify a large amount of students in a singular goal. At the STEAM Center where I work, we do that every single year. We get about 70% of the students I-9 verified within their 2nd month with us. And it's just one less thing I, as a coordinator, have to worry about when I'm handling the internship program at our school. In the chat, you will find a link to the registration for those events upcoming on the CTE calendar. Speaking of details about upcoming events and deadlines, I also wanted to direct you to an additional announcement, which is certain career pathway portals deliverables. These have been spread out and set and established by the district office. The first deadline that has just passed on this previous Friday is for schools to log in and add their school's information and contacts. If you are a school who was originally in CTS, the career tracking system, then most likely this data is already up to date, but we are asking schools to ensure that they double check and ensure that no changes such as staff leaving or any of those other types of changes that happen at the turn of the summer have been reflected in the system. So we're speaking to the correct people. Secondly, this week, there is the hope and goal that schools will update for their career and technical education programs to update the following fields under their program. which would be their course sequence, standards, and technical skills. Should you, of course, be an approved CTE program, these would not need to be changed unless you've filed an amendment or are going through reapproval. And if you are a school who is currently going through the throes of that, you would want to make sure that everything is correct. If you've never done this before in previous years, you would also want to jump on there because this will affect subsequent sections in the platform, such as generating the student's employability profile automatically. These details need to be in there so that they show up. And of course, for things like training plans and supervisor evaluations, in order for the system to import those types of details, it needs to be under that particular program. Okay. If you do need support for that, there's a contact email to specifically reach out to Omari Gay. And you can find all of these deadlines on the CTE calendar and many of the pertinent ones directly on the Career Pathways portal in the front page. Lastly, before we dive into the focus, jumping back to Alicia real quick, any updates about SWEF?
Yes, thank you, Damiano. So SWEP application deadline was last Tuesday. We are currently reviewing applications and awards will be sent out by Monday, the 25th. So the first round of awards will be next Monday. So just be in the lookout for the emails, and also just a reminder that there is no transfer of funding to your schools. This funding will be made available in the Career Pathway portal for you to use.
And as a reminder, or for the first time you might be hearing this acronym, the Student Work-Based Learning Experience Fund has replaced the acronym of SIF, S-I-F, the Supplemental Internship Fund, as SWEF now incorporates stipend-based programs as well, which have historically been industry-based projects as opposed to internships. So this is a more inclusive acronym that supports what we can do for young people. And so just updating that in your lexicon here. Diving into today's focus session, I do want to just remind you again that this session is being recorded and that it will be available to via email and posted on the Career Pathways portal should you ever want to review it. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Our next agenda item is a new topic for some and a refresher for others that have previously used the legacy system of CTS. And that is, how do we get students into this platform? How do we ensure that they have done all of the proper steps for them to be able to utilize the system in its full functionality, being able to apply for internships, conduct their payroll, monitor things like their employability profile, their career plan, and other actions, all requires a student to have an active account. And so that is where we're going to turn our focus now. In order to get students in the platform, there are 3 methods for you to do so. One of the recommended methods is to walk students through the process and have them self-register. Fortunately, if this is your first time or you're just looking for some resources to help you do that, right here on the home page of the Career Pathways portal is our student registration lesson plan. This is the walkthrough teacher version of how to get students to register themselves in the platform. It has included things like the direct links that students are going to need, the resource to our Career Pathways portal handbook, which will walk you through every single thing that you and students are able to do in the platform in a nice, simple to read visual manner, as well as videos that can provide you with the step-by-step instructions in a more engaging way for you to be able to conduct this process. If we look at the CPP homepage, we see that we have a standing deadline to get our seniors and juniors registered in the platform by essentially the end of October. If you were previously using the Career and Technical Education Tracking System, CTS, all of those accounts have been moved over to the Career Pathways portal. You do not need to have those students re-register. Their previous usernames and passwords will work just fine. To have students register themselves, it's a pretty simple process. And what you would want to do, either using this lesson plan or an alternative method, would be to bring students to the participant portal, the student, of course, being the participant, and they are going to want to use the registration button here on the bottom part of the screen. When a student clicks the registration button, what they're going to be asked for is some key information to ensure that there won't be any duplicate accounts. They'll be asked for their OSIS or student ID number, their date of birth, and the school that they attend. And what the system will do is ensure that there's not a duplication of this data. If it does detect that a student has an account already, it will enable the student to reset their password and provide them with the directions to do so. However, if they are a new student, they will in fact be able to register using this method, should it be the best practice for you. We have a question in the chat, which asks about students who graduated. What happens to them? When does that happen? Every summer, the Career Pathways portal will update, typically at the beginning of August, and move students up one grade level in the system. If a student is in grade 12 or they're in grade 14 for our P-TECH early college schools, they will be moved to the graduated status. This does not remove their data from the system. It simply places them behind an additional filter. When we're going to look at student information in just a little bit, you'll be able to see, how can I find students that have been marked as graduated? And for any reason, of course, if those students have been incorrectly marked as graduated, you can work with your Sims Borough Manager to restore their status back to completed and actively engaged. So to answer the question directly, the students that have graduated are not removed. They are simply just not immediately on the active list. And we'll take a deeper look at that in a little bit. If, for whatever reason, walking students through this self-registration process is the style for you, you may choose to approach it in one or two recommended methods, but of course, you're welcome to find a strategy that works best for your school community. The first one is the usage of this lesson plan, in which a set of teachers, particularly by a department or grade level, are assigned to run this lesson on a specifically given day to max that will complete the process. In a career and technical education school, for example, it may seem priority to have the CT teachers select a specific day in this upcoming 2 weeks to say, everyone's going to do CPP registration today. And then they can do individual follow-ups for anybody that was absent. Alternatively, if your young people are go-getters, self-starters, they take initiative, you are also encouraged to share the registration steps, which are provided again here on the lesson plan, for students to self-register. Now, there are some pros and cons for doing either one of those. Primarily, if we walk students through, we're more likely to have them finish it. But the con would be to give up an instructional period to do so. But alternatively, if we ask students to register on their own, we retain our teaching time, but we may have to do additional follow-ups. Should a student-based process not be the best solution or strategy for your school community, there are still 2 more methods you can take advantage of. One of those is staff entry. all staff members with the teacher or higher permission level have the ability to add students directly in the portal from their login. So here I am on the screen logged into the Career Pathways portal, and the same questions that I would be asked as the student registering themselves, I would be asked as a staff member to create their account for them. If I select students, followed by add new student, I will be asked things like, where do they go to school? You know, if they're in a CTU program, which one at that school, things like their name and their birth date, as well as things like their demographic information. In order for us to create the account, we do need to answer the questions that have the red asterisks, but to make it very clear to all audience members, students are never required to enter their social security number or ITIN, also known as the individual taxpayer identification number, as a requirement. As an aside, students that are hoping to earn a paid experience will need to enter these details with very few exceptions. And so you'll see that this particular field is not a requirement to get them an account, but maybe a future requirement if they are looking to, say, for example, get a paid internship or earn a stipend, in which they would typically be required. Lastly, and this is the final method, is the mass or the bulk upload function. The pro of this is we as a school community can ensure every student account gets created. The con is that a member of your school community will need to do a little data digging to make sure that the information has been gathered. On the home page of the Career Pathways portal site for staff members, when you scroll down, there will be a section entitled Mass Student Upload Process. If we open that particular link, we will see that there is a step-by-step guide for you to create all accounts for a given population in your school in one go. Typically, what this process looks like is the school will download this provided Excel spreadsheet that has been linked here. The second step, and this is the most intensive part on the school, would be to enter the data of students that have the red titles as required fields. So red titles, same thing as red asterisks. You'll have to put things down like their school, their student ID number, their email contact, their parent info. But if you were to use this method to gather that data, you can then submit it to the mass upload form where the programmer and Sims team will have all of the accounts created in a singular go. The caveat to this method is that although all of the accounts will be created, usernames and passwords will not automatically be generated. So students will still need to claim their account on the participant portal by again selecting the register button. And when they enter their information, it'll say, hold up, your school created you an account. Just pick a username and password here. Karen, something to add or clarify?
Maybe it's a glitch. How's that? It would be ideal, because I've done the mass upload form before. It would be ideal if the fields on the form line up with a enrollment list from STARS. They're 90% there. They're not 100% there. I don't know if that's something that could be done, because that would save a heck of a lot of time, because you taught me that it could be in any order as long as those ones that are indicated in red. It's like the names. You guys have it as two separate names. In the enrollment list, it comes in as one.
Yeah, really good feedback. One of the things we can do is we can put together a short guide that explains how you could export your STARS data, for example, and copy it into this spreadsheet. With very few exception, there's one or two fields like you've described, Karen, such as the name or their personal email address that might not easily export from stars. So we can give you the steps of like how to split their name and where you can get those personal emails. So that way you'd be good to go. Stars will get you 95% of the way there. And then there'll just be a few more things to do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now, regardless of the method that you as a school community choose to take, you would need to ensure that a student's account is then marked as complete. When a student's account is not completely filled out, those red asterisks that I'm referring to, they won't have access to a whole bunch of the system's features because data is missing that is needed to make it functional. This would include, but isn't limited to, things like access to their own employability profile, the space to apply for direct deposit, or things like that. One of the questions we have in the chat is asking about the specific fields that are required in the document. We can provide to you that document, but according to Alicia, yes, it is a required field. And also, just as a clarification, the question is specifically around the permanent email. And in this phrasing of it, permanent email refers to a student-based email that is not from the Department of Education or a school, that a student plans, at least at the moment, to use for the lifetime, or at least beyond high school.
Damiano, this is Melissa from Bayside. Hi, everybody. How are you?
Great, Melissa,
My
how are
question,
you?
yes, was about the permanent email. I'm working now to organize for a mass upload, gathering data from different sources, as you mentioned, Damiano. But for me, that's been the struggle of gathering that. Is that something that the students, once the account is created, the students can enter that when they go to complete the profile? Will the mass upload still go through without it if we have all of the other required fields?
Typically, the mass upload wouldn't be processed without those permanent emails. However, if there's a given circumstance, we could definitely see if we would be able to have it go through the platform. One of the issues is when not all of the data fields are required, it would mean that the accounts wouldn't be marked as complete. So if we were to push it through, students would still need to log in and insert their permanent email to be marked as complete. So what I'm saying in short is it's possible, but then there will be an added step.
Added step for the students in terms of the fields they have to submit, right?
Yes, or a
Okay.
staff member, if the student is struggling, can jump in and help them as well.
Great. Thanks, Damiano.
Great question. For demonstration purposes, I have here a fake school. None of this data is real. But what I wanted to do was just share with you the difference between an incomplete profile and a complete profile. Here we have a student that doesn't exist, again, Laura Radford, and her account here is incomplete. It is missing details in the system. And so you'll notice there is not really much I can do with Laura's account. I can't start creating her an internship experience. I can't check in on their career plan, and the student wouldn't be able to do any of those things. And that's because the data in red, this red text line, is missing from her account. I, as a staff member, could come in and complete these questions on her behalf. Or the student would be able to log in from their side of the woods in the participant portal and finalize this data. When all of the details have been entered, the student's account will automatically be moved from incomplete to complete. I also just wanted to take a moment here to jump back to the previous question, which is, where do I find my graduated students? And this is where you'd be able to search for them. If you select and check off the graduated column as well, students on that list will also show up. If we now take a look at a student who does have a complete profile, another fake student that doesn't exist, here we have Alex, we can see that there are many more options available for their account in question. I can create experiences, which in this case are paid opportunities like internships and industry-based projects, which are typically stipended. I have access to their employability profile, which all CTE programs must have. This is the place where you as the staff member can enter data on their document, as well as, of course, set up the skills evaluation component for students to do. The career plan is also available on here. Students are able to do this from their portal, but a staff member can, of course, add or update as they see fit. The ability to issue things like digital training plans and see a list of work-based learning activities should you be logging it in the Career Pathways portal will also be listed on here. So that way you can keep on top of your work-based learning hours tracking for those 54 hours are all available here.
Thank you, Sean. The chocolates were delicious.
In summation, the goal or the deadline set by the district about having those students have a complete account is what is being aimed for by October 27th. With that, I will stop as this would be the rounding out part of our focal point here before we go to the next component of today. But are there any clarifications or questions around getting students registered and having their accounts get marked as complete?
It's ridiculous.
Okay, if there are questions, we can of course answer them. You're welcome to drop them in the chat or follow up by unmuting yourself as well. For now, I am also going to just take a moment to share with you all a document that will help you this year in navigating through work-based learning opportunities for your students, as well as for tracking them. Although the Career Pathways portal is a centralized system for monitoring your work-based learning activities, and a technical support session will be offered into how to do that exactly. One of the things that was released just recently by the New York State Education Department was information relevant to changes and updates about what is work-based learning. And for those of us that are keyed into the 54-hour metric, what counts as a big, big concern for us as district users. Happily, we can report that the city district office has gone to bat using the feedback from other staff, school-based members, and in some cases, even some students about, providing reflection and suggestions for improvement based on the policy. And so New York State has updated the language, opportunities, and categories about what types of work-based learning contribute to that 54-hour metric. Although there will be additional details available to you, both from the state and city offices in support of diving deep into what this looks like, including the Work-Based Learning Institute, as well as individual supports through initiatives like Future Ready NYC, the Modern Youth Apprenticeship, and of course, the career and technical education teams. I did want to drop in the chat for your convenience the link here to what is now considered an updated version of the work-based learning opportunities grid. Again, although there will be a deeper dive into this information, it was pragmatic and important for the district to share this information with you as soon as it was readily available. And so you can find here on the list things like the updated names of specific work-based learning activities, in which something like the workplace tour is officially been renamed the industry tours. And workplace challenges, as we in the city know of them, are identified by the state of New York as industry-based projects. Items on this list at an upfront vantage point or view would in fact contribute to the 54 hours, but I provided in that specific verbiage as you would need to both keep into the spirit of its definition, as well as ensure that the appropriate documentation has been logged, both in the Career Pathways portal and where applicable under a particular student's account, for any required artifacts. We can see here, and we'll just do a brief one just together in advance of hoping for a future session from the district to break all of these down. We can see that career fairs would be one of those items, which we all know and love as things that we sometimes call job fairs, college fairs, career expos, where young people get to engage with employers and recruiters to gain information. But in order for this to contribute to the time of a student earning towards that 54-hour threshold, there are a few things that need to happen. The state has provided guidance that there must be a documentation effort to demonstrate that students engaged with multiple organizations at this fair. And there are explicit details of what you could do, such as a documentation of interaction through a sign-off sheet. We can also see here that the City of New York has provided a recommended grade band for each of these activities. You know your school community best. And so if you feel that a particular opportunity would be suited for another grade level, pending any policy restrictions, you should feel comfortable in ensuring that you are providing a full spectrum of work-based learning activities. You'll also find that this document also provides a recommended implementation protocol, which is just a student / coordinator reflected process in which how your work-based learning coordinator might consider how to implement this at your school. There are certainly additional manners and mechanisms to make these things successful and do things the right way. But providing you with at least a generic place to start, should your school, having not previously done this type of activity, at least have a footing to get going. A few other features that are available on here include things like recommended supplemental documentation to collect, the nice to haves. They support your stance of reporting, the estimated number of hours per time the activity is run for a student to accumulate, as well as what category it fits into. And this drives me to my last point for today, at least regarding this grid, is that there are some activities on this grid that previously had been taken off. In most cases, this would be our awareness style activities, things like the career interest assessment, guest speakers, industry tours, which for the last 2 years we have been told would no longer account towards this metric. Again, the state heard the feedback. They appreciate the advocacy of our team here at the district office and schools. And so what they've said is awareness style activities, things like the ones on your current screen, can contribute to a fraction of the 54 hours. In any combination or hitherunto, things like career fairs and guest speakers can count up to 20 of those hours. You could, and although I don't recommend it, you could do 20 guest speakers for an hour each. But once you do 21, they only are going to count those first 20 hours as part of the 54-hour requirement. If you mixed and matched, you did a career fair, you did an industry tour, as long as it doesn't go over 20, you will, of course, be able to contribute to the score. And the Career Pathways portal will be updated to ensure that it appropriately accounts for this number as well. Finally, to answer Maria's question in the chat, this grid will be shared, of course, as well as linked on the Career Pathways portal homepage for schools to directly access at any time. And then to address Emily's question in the chat, industry-related credentials is considered an activity. Our best information that is available regarding that is on screen. But if you are concerned or have any type of clarification to determine what you need to do to make something count, that's when you're going to want to reach out to your support person and get clarity on, what does this actually mean? What do I need to do in order for us to appropriately log it as functional time? I personally, as an offshoot from this, recognize that this is a big departure from previous information. It wasn't something that, like people are saying to like mess with you. So it's being discerned in live time, and updates will continue to come on. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I've been talking a lot. Before we go to next steps, are there any particular questions about the grid or additional clarifications we might get from the team here?
Damiano, I just wanted to give you a shout out. This grid is fabulous, so user friendly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Damiano, there is a question from Hannah in the chat.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So I see in the chat now that Hanama has indicated that for career interest assessments, does this have to be facilitated by an industry partner, or can a teacher facilitate it for it to count? I'm going to reference our my favorite colleague, Tanya Navas, to just clarify, because I have an understanding of it, but I go to the big guns when I really need to know.
Hi, everyone. So this, not to put too fine a point on it, this is one of the new activities that we don't really have a lot of detail on. As I understand it, last year we had some really good feedback from the field where folks were saying, listen, I'm doing all this prep with my kids and they are meeting with my industry partners to do lots of hands-on work in order for them to pass this industry recognized credential exam. And that is in and of itself, it's work-based learning. I mean, they made a very good argument. And so here we are today where we now see the industry related credential prep time that can now count as hours. The credential itself will let you know what kind of proctoring and grading needs to happen. For the most part, this is stuff that is done by the institution that is providing the industry related credential. So in other words, like NICER, for example, or any of the health programs that we have. Those are exams that are provided by the institution that is creating that industry credential, meaning that when they pass this test, they can go straight into the job field because they have a credential that allows them to work.
Gotcha. And Tanya, just to clarify, because I know that that was one of the highly contested ones in relation to the career interest assessments, like taking the ASVAB or a inventory of career aptitude. Would a teacher be able to issue that and have students reflect on that for time? Or do we need additional clarity from the state? Or does that also require like a direct industry partner to administer it?
I would only be guessing in a response right now. I believe that the answer would be that it is something that is supposed to be done in the classroom, but again, work-based learning in the classroom, there's a disconnect there. So we will have to get back to you on that one.
And of course, I'm not in a position to dictate policy, but what I would imagine, just as a speculative point, is that many of the awareness activities are lower touch points with industry partners, and something like the career interest assessment might be something where the tool itself is taking that role. And so my initial imprint on it, Hanama, is yes to your question. But once we receive more information, we will of course keep you updated. Helen, you have been so patient. How can we help you?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions in regards to how we can receive the work-based learning hours. I'm from high school art and design, and I taught architecture, and I work really closely with the work-based learning team. I do need clarification in terms of when our classes, like let's say in architecture, when we do architectural critique presentation, we always have industry partners, and our sometimes the length, depending on what we work on, the presentations themselves can be 1 to 3 hours long. And back then we were told, well, there's only a fraction of that the students are entitled to receive. And so we were never really clear on what that number is. That's one thing. The other part is that a lot of the projects that we also participate are basically, let's say, competitions. We do this global skyscraper competition, and it goes on pretty much every day for a couple of months. And what we do is we input the hours in terms of what's being worked in the classroom. And then, of course, when we actually have the preliminary presentations and the final presentations, those are separate to make sure we're aligned with presentations and guests. We try to be very detailed oriented, but sometimes it's confusing. So are we doing the right thing, or are we categorizing things? And then there were times when, I'll be honest with you, when we did have guest speakers come in, I didn't categorize them as guest speakers. I kind of put them under other, because there was this ongoing participation. We always had an assignment for the students or a reflection that they had to do in Google Classroom. That would be their evidence, but they're still in Google Classroom, so are we supposed to attach these things into the CPP, as evidence? Again, there's so much unknowns here. And now that we're changing the system and updating, I just want more clarification on what we should be doing with the curriculum.
It's a great question, Helen. I'm going to do my best to answer them because I feel as though I have the answers, but it's something that we're all working on together. So we'll start with the first part, where it's like, we've been doing these activities for a while. We're maybe not always clear on what we should classify something as, and we really need somebody to turn to for help. Depending on the confidence level of your school's work-based learning coordinator, that can be your level 1 support. Your level 2 support is, of course, going to come from the district office. We have our Pathways program coaches available to assist you in providing direction and advisement on what could possibly be the appropriate classification. These folks are, of course, connected a little bit closer to the state education department and may, in fact, have the answer you seek. Of course, like many things in the city of New York, the city is just a vehicle for state policy. And so they would most likely share with you that they have a very well-informed answer, but of course, it's always going to be up to the determination of the state for a final verdict, which they can always inquire on your behalf. And that would be your level 3 support, the state giving a finite answer on whether something or not counts. With regards to the second component of your series, there is that sometimes I think that we as a community require additional structure and support to really figure out, like, what are we going to do for work-based learning. And so with the way you've described things, like, marking something like a guest speaker as other because it was more engaging, or, it was done a little bit different than a traditional one, isn't entirely an issue, but I think it comes to what is the core of the issue. So like a guest speaker for me could also be a skills demonstration, or like a teaching, a teaching session where they're working with kids to show them a new skill. It's really about wordsmithing to the functional categories of the state without leaving what I call the spirit of the work. Small, low engagement. It's supposed to expose or bring awareness to the student about something, either a career or a skill. And so all of those things in my mind are a guest speaker. Where I continue onwards with that, though, is something like a competition. You won't find competition listed as a work-based learning activity. And although work-based learning and competition specifically, I would personally consider them one. There isn't a category to choose from the state. So I think from a functional, purposeful function, maybe the competition isn't actually the goal here. Maybe it's the learning that happens on the way with that industry partner who is working on this project with them. If that's the case, it's an industry-based project. If it's really the process of meeting with adults and getting feedback and, really growing as individuals, and the project just happens to be, the vehicle that gets them through it, now it sounds like you're talking more about mentoring. And so your work-based learning coordinator is going to be invited to these institute meetings with these initiatives to work through how to navigate through this syntax, how to figure out what is the proper way to codify and document. And then your last question is about the documentation. So Helen, I've known you for quite a while. I'm a fan from afar, and I know that you're very detail oriented and you're on top of things. And so you probably have all of these documents either in a Google Drive folder or a file folder, and you're just like, I don't want to move all of that. And no one is asking you to. What the district is primarily doing is advising that moving forward, we try to centralize things in the Career Pathways portal for historical relevance, for an audit, for program approval, especially if a cycle is upcoming for you. Like, you are more than welcome to use your existing structures and over time move to CPP. However, let's say you were to do a guest speaker next week, and you have students do a reflection. It could be a beneficial opportunity for you to get students to start getting used to the platform, as students can upload their own reflections, so they don't have to send them to their teacher or upload them somewhere else. They could just submit it directly through the Documents tab in the participant portal. And strategies like that are things that will appear in further technical support sessions and those other initiatives I mentioned earlier, because we are all going through the same process together. I may sound like I know what I'm doing, and I feel like sometimes I do, but part of it is like me making it up as we go, because I want to be just like you. I want to be detail oriented. I want my documents in place, and I don't want to do it in 12 different systems. So for me, CPP is that place, and I'm hoping that it will be the same for everyone else. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, actually you did. But my concern is that, well, everything that we have done up to today, because to be honest with you, I'm actually creating a database for my seniors to see exactly where they're at with their work-based learning hours. And I'm a little bit concerned across, the school-wide. A lot of them are under still. So I'm thinking that, we should target them to get some internships or whatever it may be to get those hours. But is there something to worry about if we did anything wrong from the previous years for the juniors and sophomores? Because all that information is already in. So we did the best we can. And of course, every teacher documents differently. Is there any concern? Can we just leave it as it is? Or should we just try to do more than what's required, just in case we're under the 54 credits? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would advise that, you have the documents, like retain them, make sure that you have calculated the best you can. The reason why I push for the Career Pathways portal so hard to log your work-based learning is that it's the same language and format for everybody. So all the teachers, all the coordinators, no matter what school you go to, it's all going to be the same. And so for me, it's a semi-foolproof way, because nothing is so serious than the foolish DOE. Whoops, didn't mean to say that. But if for me, it's an easy way to run a report, see who I need to put my work-based learning HR code for and stars. And so if you need strategies to migrate that information in like a way where it's not too intense for you, I can provide you one-on-one support for that as a one-time solution, because the recommendation of how to do that is not the typical process. It's it's a one-time exception type of rule.
Right, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time on this.
Anytime, Helen. And I'm sure there are other people either here today or hopefully are watching this video, wherever they may be, to say, I have these questions too, and I just want somebody to finally tell me, do it this way.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything.
Mhm. Folks, any other questions, clarifying, or clarifications or concerns? All right. Well, I will remain on the line should there be any more questions. You are always welcome to reach out to your central support personnel should you have any additional inquiries. And at this time, I will stop the recording.